Welcome to the MMHP and the 989, channeling all styles and eras of Michigan music history.
Hello, Michigan music lovers. This is Scott Baker. I want to welcome you to the Michigan Music History Podcast. I am flanked by Michigan music royalty. To the left, Dr. J. To the right, Sir Fred. We cut from just around the block of the Michigan Rock Legends Hall of Fame in Bay City, Michigan, here at Studio 163 in Essexville. And now it's time to grab a favorite beverage, hit the cruise, and take a trip back with us through Michigan's rich music history.
This podcast is sponsored by our friends at Electric Kitsch, located at 2106 Kosciuszko Avenue in Bay City, Michigan. And now, here's your host, Scott Baker.
Welcome back, everybody, here, Studio 163 in Essexville. We are getting the cold, breezy, tornado-style weather for since last weekend and up to this today. It's like Thursday here. It's nuts. Things blowing everywhere. The temp went from 60 to 38 right now, I think.
Something like that.
Yeah, in a matter of 7 hours or 6 hours, and
cold front moving in.
woo.
I just got out of my car. It said 41. It was 61 when I woke up this morning.
Unbelievable.
That's
On the
crazy.
news, it said it 63. It hit local record.
Unbelievable day.
Either Saginaw or Bay City.
Welcome to Michigan.
Yeah, Lynn and I walked today. It was beautiful, except for the wind. I mean, it was blowing hard.
Brutal. And it's only gotten
When you were
worse.
going into the wind, you had to do a little work.
Mackinac Bridge to trucks.
They closed the Mackinac Bridge
Yeah.
to trucks. Unbelievable.
That's right.
I'm sure.
Well, there were all kinds of. I was watching the news before I came over, and there were a lot of trucks overturned.
Holy crap. Well, we got a special guest in the house tonight, Mr. Dick Coughlin, who came from Saginaw, said he's crossed power lines and all sorts of downed stuff, including in the story here. What else have you ran through in order to get here tonight to Essexville, Dick?
There's a couple. The cops had the couple of streets blocked off, so I had to take a couple of detours. But
Wow.
the GPS got me here. So
Wonderful, wonderful. And Dr. J's in the house. What's new, Dr. J?
Couple things. I did a presentation at SVSU this past week for the big statewide Ollie meeting. So it was live at SVSU, and then it was virtual for the Ollies at the rest of the state. And I did it on Frankie Lyman's tombstone, and my book, which I've written, and it was kind of a shortened version of the book. That's at the printer, so hopefully that will be available at
that's gonna
the
be good.
That's good news.
Great.
at the museum here in the near future. It's quite a story. I hope I did it
And
justice.
if it's coming from you, I'll bet it's a story.
Well, it's really something.
Did you see that little story side note in the last few days on the bones of the singer from the 60s band? They found they just found his they found the bones in 1980 or 82, and they just said it was one of the singers from, not the Four Tops, but
No, I know what you mean. I've read it, but
it was a story in the last 2 days in the newspaper and, and
really?
online. Yeah.
No, I didn't see that.
Oh, I
It's
can't
not
think-
Iron Butterfly, was it?
Nope.
Okay, because I have a friend of mine, a guy who I worked with on the fake zombie story. He was trying to put together that particular story about one of the guys in Iron Butterfly who had been lost for a long period
the
of time.
bass player.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
he's been gone for a long time. Nobody knows what happened to him.
Yeah.
So,
You talking about from Iron Butterfly?
yeah.
But he just died like 10 years ago, wasn't it? Or
No,
Lee?
this-
You're talking about Lee, right?
No, this is
A different one. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he was the original bass player. I mean, there's a band that's went through a number
Yeah.
of personnel
Lot of
changes over
variations.
the years. Yeah, but there's just some of these really unusual
It must have
stories in
been.
rock and roll.
I know who you're talking about. It's one that happened. A guy that was playing in the band along the way, he disappeared
Right.
from the band. Yeah, that was after Lee played in the band. But the guy I'm talking about was from the OJs.
Oh,
Remains found in 1982, identified as a guitarist from the R&B group the OJs.
Wow.
And his name was Frankie Little Jr.
Oh, okay, I missed that.
That is why I thought of that, because you said Frankie Lyman, and I was like, somehow that triggered my memory for that reading that issue. But it's pretty unique. So you're going back to find the DNA of everything and
Oh, really? Yeah.
putting stuff together. But how you doing, Sir Fred? You're in the
I'm
house?
doing great.
Right.
Good. I've seen a lot of smiles from you the last few times I've ran into you, and things seem to be going good. That's great.
Well, been finding a lot of records.
Yeah? What's new?
Working on my book, finishing up, and starting to come together.
You've seen you've been posting, too, some questions. Are you getting your answers that you want?
Yes, I have.
Outstanding.
Yeah, it's not all on Facebook. I gave them my email, so they've been sending emails with photos. And,
I saw a few people replied to you on the last couple things you've been putting up, but that's great.
I finally got some info on Tejano bands.
Really? So you're able to finish those last few chapters that you're looking at then?
Yeah,
Polka and
it's
Tiana?
Working on them.
Yeah, it's too bad that the Gonzalez family that booked all those shows that the GI Forum in Saginaw aren't still around because, boy, they had some Hall of Famers.
Is that Lily?
Yeah, Lily
Lily.
and Jose.
Yeah.
Well, one of the guys who got in touch with me is, you probably know him, Fred Garcia.
Doesn't ring a
He
bell.
had bands in Saginaw Bay City for years. I think he lives in Texas now or something. But he said his mother and father and aunt and uncle kind of started the whole Tejano thing in Saginaw.
Wow, okay. So
So I'm waiting to hear more.
Gonzalez's,
Right.
Yeah, I was talking to Bobby Balderrama about that once. So
Yeah, I've talked to Bobby, but he tells me to get a hold of Frankie Lugo. Because Frankie Lugo used to have a radio show on Tejano music.
Mr. Dick Coughlin, how have you been, man?
I have been super.
You playing drums still?
I have been. I've just to keep myself in it, to keep myself in practice.
Good.
And I've done a few studio sessions and sat in with the ripcords a couple times.
Okay.
The Hey Little Cobra fame. And I felt like a mushroom sitting there,
Wow. Where did you play with the Ripcords?
I helped them open their 2015 summer tour. And it just happened that I was in Allentown, Pennsylvania that weekend to see my daughter and son-in-law. And my wife and I were there, and Sean's parents were there, and Mitch Schechter got a hold of me from the Ripcords. And they said, well, why don't you come on down where we're opening our tour at the Bethlehem Steel Stacks. And they've turned it into a big outdoor venue. And so, yeah, sure. So I went down there and I met up with him, and he went into a suitcase and he pulled out a band member badge, to put over my neck. I looked at that. Okay, what am I doing? And about halfway through the show, they announced me up, and I sat in for the rest of the show. And I just played. I didn't play drums. I played percussion.
Okay.
And but one thing I'm proud of that not too many people will ever be able to say, and that is I was on stage with the Ripcords performing "Hey Little Cobra."
All right.
Yes.
Well, for those that are hearing this voice that they don't usually get to hear, is usually you get to hear him play drums if you're familiar with 60s rock and roll. But this is the drummer that belonged in the Cherry Slush and has brought a lot of music all the way up to till now and is still involved in keeping the 60s music and his band site and his Facebook presence alive. Not only that, but you might find him also at a couple hockey games here and there, or maybe at a haunted house. But we're going to get through all that tonight.
Good chance.
There's a good chance. And we worked really hard to get Dick here. It was a month in the works, and we got everything penned out and around COVID here. And we want to thank Dick for making it out here. But, Dick, take us back to the early days. What got you into drumming, man?
I had to take this honest to God truth. I started, when I got into 7th grade, I was going to North Intermediate School. And you had to take so many classes, but you had to take an elective. And I didn't know what I wanted to take for an elective, so I thought, well, I'll try band. Maybe there's something in there that I can take. And I got in there. My teacher's name was Mr. Somerville, Earl Somerville. And he said, well, asked me what I wanted to play or what I knew how to play. And I said, I don't know how to play anything. He says, go back in the drum section. So I went back in the drum section, and he put me on the bass drum because I was no good on the snare because I couldn't read the music they had put in front of me. So he said, every time my stick goes down, you hit the bass drum, then you'll be fine. So I kind of faked my way through bass drumming for 3 years at North Intermediate School. And during that time, I taught myself how to play drums. And my dad bought me a kit, and I just worked at it, and it just seemed to come to me. And I started playing to records, different records. And
What was some of the records you played to?
I played to a lot of Beach Boys stuff.
Beach Boys?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was a real big fan of Dennis Wilson. And this is another funny story here, but true.
Mm-hmm.
After I got to know Hal Blaine, I had told him how I had followed other drummers, and that's how I learned. Because when we did our 50th anniversary single when we were young, I sent a copy of it out to Hal for him to review.
I remember this.
And there was a lot of guys on there that reviewed it from some big bands back then. And I got to talking to Hal one day, and I was telling him how I did all this, and I said, yeah, I learned from Dennis Wilson, and I learned from this guy, and that guy, and this guy. He's laughing. I said, Dick, I was your drum teacher. He was the one playing drums on all those records. Because he was with the Wrecking Crew.
Right.
There you go. That makes sense.
Yep.
Unbelievable. He says, you learned from me. That's so funny.
Well, pretty good teacher, Hal Blaine.
Oh, he was a good guy. Yeah, real good guy.
Yeah, his documentary is fascinating on the Wrecking Crew. Yeah, he comes across as really a good guy.
Well, he passed, and we were sad to lose him.
Well, sure.
There's a Hal Blaine album at Cat's Meow thrift shop,
Really?
but it's unplayable. So I didn't buy it.
Yeah. Rough copy.
Very
Well,
rough.
if you've got Dennis Wilson's
Pacific
solo album,
Pacific Ocean Blue. That's
that's
one of
Hal Blaine playing the drums on that.
Really?
Yeah.
What?
Dennis Wilson asked Hal to play drums on that.
Really?
Yeah.
No, I'm a huge fan of that record, and I'm to this day aware that was Dennis Wilson's solo album that Dennis played. Hal played a lot of it, maybe.
I don't know how much of it he played.
Because the drum sound on that record is one of the reasons you buy that record.
Yeah,
Because it
I know.
sounds so unique.
Well, but I think it was more of a focus on Dennis as a singer and songwriter, which,
Makes sense.
he was kind of always in the background in the Beach Boys.
Yeah.
Very talented in his own right.
But then, if you want the rest of the story,
Yeah.
of course, the Beatles came out. And everybody wanted to start a band. Everybody wanted to be in a band. So I knew a couple of guys that played guitar, and another guy that played saxophone. And we decided, well, we'd get together in one of the guys' house, and we'd try and practice and try to do some playing. And his name was Jack Oman. And he played saxophone, and his mother was a horse fancier, and she had a tack room. So we set up in this tack room. And Danny Parsons, our singer, came over, and Art Hoffey came over. And at the time we first started, Art was another drummer, because he was playing drums in a polka band called the Polka Dots. And
Really?
yeah,
I didn't know Art did that.
Oh, you put Fred on the... He's going to be on the investigation here with the polka
I
dots.
saw the polka dots, a picture. I'll have to look at it again.
and so we said, well, we'll let you play with us, but you're going to have to play bass, because we didn't have a bass player. And so I remember the first bass he got was a Thunderbolt 007. And it was one of the overseas made
Rickenbacker?
basses.
Rickenbacker?
No, it was more like
Probably a Japanese man.
Oh,
Japanese.
because he played them down the line.
Oh yeah, he had a Ricky.
That was his thing.
Yeah, and I'll be darned. His cousin was Ron Surgison, who was playing bass with the Paupers.
Right.
And he learned a lot from Ron. And darned if Art didn't turn out to be one of the best darn bass players in the country. And I depended on Art a lot. And some drummers will tell you this, and some drummers won't. And I talked to Ron Foose, the bass player for Paul Revere and the Raiders. And I told him, you know, if it wasn't for you bass players, us drummers would be out of luck. Because most drummers are set up in back of the band. So you don't really hear the band very much. But if you can feel the bass, not necessarily hear it, but if you can feel it, you will never get lost.
Well, that's interesting.
It works out great. I didn't even know if we were any good. But
Now, this is the beginnings of what turned into the Bells of Rimney?
yeah, that was the first band. It was called the Wayfarers, and then it was the Captives, and then it was the Bells of Rimney, and then we changed it into the Cherry Slush.
Okay, now, why don't you take us through the name changes here? Okay, Wayfarers, that kind of sounded like
Folky.
It was a folky thing.
yes.
Right,
Were you kind of playing the folk music of the day?
Yeah,
Okay.
and tried to do some rock and roll, but there was only 3 of us at that time, and it just didn't work out very well. So I'm gonna have to stretch my brain here a little bit, but we decided we wanted to play at Daniel's Den, and there's no way we were gonna play at Daniel's Den the way we were. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we put this. We got Art, and Danny was singing up a storm, and a guy by the name of Mark Burdick was playing guitar at the time.
Yeah.
And I think he's over here in Bay City somewhere now. I don't know where exactly.
I know he lived in Essexville for a while because I had his kids in school.
Really?
At Kramer.
Okay.
I used to go out with his sister.
Oh,
Julie.
Oh, Julie. Yeah. And see, it was me. Then it was me, Mark, Gene Bruce. We got him, and Art Hoffey, Dan Parsons, and we went on as the Captives. And we did that for a while. And Gene decided that he was going to go away to college, and we were going to have to get another guitar player. So that's when we found Charlie Woodward. He was playing with a band at Arthur Hill High School called the Dignitaries. He was a lead guitar player. He could do Chuck Berry stuff like you wouldn't believe. And I hired him on the spot. Once I saw him, the Dignitaries weren't happy with me.
Now, were you still the Captives at this
Still the
point?
Captives at the time.
Yeah.
Okay, and then it was maybe a week later, we changed it to the Bells of Rimney, because we started playing a lot of bird stuff. And that was one of the songs. It was on the
First album?
first Birds album, Mr.
Yeah.
Tambourine Man.
Oh, it's still a great
And
album.
a great song.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to change the name, so we changed it to the Bells of Rimney. And we did that for quite a while. I mean, that one went quite a ways. We recorded She'll Be Back and Wicked Old Witch. That was out on Dick Wagner's label and Dicto. And that was by the Bells of Rimney.
Yeah, and we probably should maybe stop you right there because that was a pretty significant, at least, I guess it wasn't the released version, but you guys had recorded at least some demos,
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah.
With Art Scheel.
Right.
And one of them was She'll Be Back, right?
Right. We did She'll Be Back, and we did another one there called Don't Walk Away.
Yeah, right. And when I had interviewed Art, he had some snapshots that were taken at Art Scheel of you guys, and one of them you had the acetate that Art had made, and had a couple shots that you could kind of see Art setting up a mic, but those are the only photographs of any rock and roll band recording with Art.
I've got those at home. I've got some of those at home.
Yeah, I know. Art either sent me scans of them because I used, I think, all of them in the article I wrote about the Cherry Slush. I mean, they're just fascinating. Something out of a time machine. to actually see that and see a little bit of what the recording studio looked like, which looked like somebody's living room, basically.
Well, did you see the picture of me walking out of the engineer's booth?
No.
Yeah, I was wearing my Beach Boys shirt with the stripes on it.
If you could send me, I would love to see that.
I'll send it over
Because
to you.
there's only one picture I've ever been able to find of Art's booth.
I'll get him over to you.
Yeah, and that was of him doing some church music, so it doesn't have that real rock and roll thing going on there.
I'll go through the photos.
Yeah,
And,
I'd love to get that.
That's awesome. Wow.
Yeah, for sure.
So anyway, the Charlie Woodward came on, and we were going to play at the Den one night, and we wanted to do this. We wanted to do something special to announce our name change, and Gene was still with us. He hadn't left for school yet, but Charlie was there with us also. And we went on. We did our first set as the Bells of Rimney. Okay, did all of our old stuff, all the birds and all this stuff. And my brother was John, rest his soul.
Yeah.
He was the DJ at the Den at the time. And when he announced us for the second set, he said, and here they are, a band with a new name, the Cherry Slush. And the curtains open, and Charlie hit that Roll Over Beethoven lead part, and we just wailed from there.
Wow.
Just that old rock and roll.
Now, I seem to remember from the bio that you guys actually got the name Cherry Slush from stopping at a drive-in or something.
Dottie's Dairy Bar up in Rose City.
Wow.
We went in, we were up there playing for like a week. And we had this cabin. The cabin's another story.
Was there a teen
Yeah.
club up there? Do you remember what it was called?
I think it was just called the Log Cabin.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not sure. I'll have to ask Jim. Jim Leach will probably know. But we were playing there, and it was right across the street from it was this place called Dottie's Dairy Bar. And it was hot. So we went in there to get something to drink, malt or something. And there was all this sign on the wall. And I've got the sign somewhere. But it was just made out of paper. And Art had backed up to it. And he reached his hand behind his back. And he pulled the sign off the wall. and we walked out of the place after we got our stuff. And he says, "Hey guys, look at that guy." And they had a pineapple slush, an orange slush, a grape slush, and a cherry slush. And we thought, Cherry Slush, that's the name. So we took that thing and we laid it out in the center of the street. Right out on a line on the center of the road there, and we got down on our knees and we bowed to the west. That's going to be our new name. That's how we got the name the Cherry Slush.
Wow. Okay.
Incredible. Rose City.
Rose City, Michigan.
Love it.
Now, was Jim working with you guys at this point?
Mm-hmm.
And when, how did you go about getting Dick Wagner involved with the band? Because he produced and added, maybe kind of rearranged She'll Be Back, and then gave you Wicked Old Witch,
Wicked
right?
Old Witch.
Yes.
And he gave us I Cannot Stop You.
Yeah, wow, which was really
that's the one that
a
took
good
off.
one. Yes, indeed.
And
So how did that all come down?
we were up in Traverse City. And the whole band, well, I can't say the whole band. Myself, my mom and dad, my brother stayed home, and I think maybe, I don't remember who else came up with us, but we were looking down the road and then walking up the street carrying a duffel bag to the campsite. We were staying at the Traverse City State Park with my brother John and Gene Bruce. And they decided, they took a bus up. They took a Greyhound bus up to Traverse City. And they found where our campsite was. So we heard some people talking about going to this place called the Town Sauce. And they said it was a teen nightclub.
Oh yeah, very well known one up there.
So we're down on the beach, screwing around down there. Lenny Renicky is out on a paddleboard, right across the street from us.
Wow.
So we didn't even know the Bossmen were up there. So we hitchhiked down to the Town's house that night, and we took in the Dick Wagner show, and that's where we first met Dick Wagner.
Oh, wow.
I was up there at the Town's house in Traverse City. Got to be good friends with him.
What month, what year was that?
Oh, God, that was probably 1960. Would probably have been July of 65, maybe.
Wow.
65, 66. Somewhere
Fantastic.
Probably 65, I'm thinking.
Okay.
And I remember Dick had a sore throat. He could hardly sing. And you ever hear of a band out of Grand Rapids called the Sheffields?
Yes, I
Okay, Gary Teal. Mm-hmm. Okay, but Gary Teal, he went up and he sang for Dick that day.
Wow.
up at Traverse City. And we got to talking to him, and somehow he ended up at our practice over at Gene Bruce's house. We practiced down in his basement.
Well, Dick lived in Saginaw at that point, right?
Yeah, he was. Dick was living over at 1809 Phelan. I'll never forget the address.
Right.
And we would have Dick. He would come over to our practices, and he'd give us pointers here and there, and if we did something that he thought was wrong, he'd tell us. And we didn't always take his advice because we were kids,
Of course.
We wanted to do things our way. So, but it all worked out. And he'd grab a guitar and he'd do You and I or On the Road. We'd all do it as a band, with him playing lead guitar. It was kind of cool. So it got to be a lot of fun. And
So you brought the acetate that you made with Art over to Dick to play it for him? Is that how that worked?
that might probably how he heard it, but he knew it needed a lot of work. After the first one that we did. And so he did some rearranging and change some words in there. And Jim did also, Jim Leach, he did some producing on it. And we decided, well, let's record it at a different studio. Then Dick was recording at United Sound in Detroit. And so we booked a session down there, and it was one of those weird days like today in December, in the middle of winter. And it was like 60 or 70 degrees. And Dick was driving a Cadillac convertible. So we put the top down on his convertible. It was a cream-colored Cadillac. And we took off down I-75 to United Sound, and we went in there. We were very lucky because we got Danny Dallas, one of the premier engineers, to do that session. We did that session in one day, both sides, She'll Be Back and Wicked Old Witch. And we were so glad to have Danny because he did just a tremendous job on that song.
Yeah, that was a pretty good little single for your first
for our local
first
single,
record.
absolutely.
You bet, yeah.
And actually, it turned into a tri-state type thing, Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio. Mm-hmm. And didn't get a lot of airplay down there, but got a lot of airplay up here. And I guess Dick saw something in us that he thought maybe we could go farther. And he told us he had a song that we could have called I Could Not Stop You. Well, I had heard him up at his house play the acetate of that the Bossmen had did. And it's on YouTube. Anybody can listen to that. But we listened to that. I said, that's a great song. And he said, well, you guys can record it if you want to. I said, well, okay. So we practiced it. And he would come over and listen to us practice it. And he thought, you guys are just about there with this thing. So he booked a session for us at Audio Sound in Cleveland. And we were playing at the Den one night, and we left the Den at midnight when it closed. And we had a U-Haul trailer, had all of our equipment in it, put it in there. And Dick and those guys were already down there doing the session. And so we drove down all night on a Saturday night, we drove down to Audio Sound and found the studio. It had one of those elevators that comes up off the sidewalk. You know, you load all your stuff on there and you go back down the sidewalk. And we got down there and Dick was there. And we got lucky again because we got Don White as an engineer down there. And we did I Cannot Stop You. And one of the guys, I'm not sure remember which one it was, went over and instead of playing guitar on it, he played the Hammond B3 that they had in there. You'll hear an organ in the background of that song. Okay, so he did that. And Dick and Jim are in the booth producing. And Dick's got a guitar in his hand. And it was a flat-bodied Epiphone. And he had it plugged in through the board. He didn't have an amp in there. And that walk up that you hear at the beginning, that grinding, he's doing that. And we thought, hey, that's great. Let's keep it there. And that's what he did in the song.
Wow.
So we had him in on that one. So
well, that's pretty nice.
But if you listen to that song, you'll hear at the end of it, you'll hear a walk down. Da 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 da. That was the first thing we recorded. We recorded the end first, and then we recorded the song, and Don White tacked that ending on it.
How long did it take you to record that down there? Do you remember?
We were down there probably for 6 or 7 hours.
And you only got the one song done, right?
We did the one song then.
And then you went back to, is that when you went back to Shield and recorded the B-side?
Yes. We went back, but Dick went with us
Dick,
back there.
yes.
Yeah. And see, originally, Don't Walk Away, I wrote that song myself. And I wrote it about my seventh grade girlfriend, who was still a very good friend of mine. And
I'm sure she knows that the song is about her, right?
Yeah, she knows. Well, she dumped me anyway. But,
even though she said she'll be back, she didn't come back.
No, she's a great girl, and I still see her every once in a while. But I wrote that about her, but it was lacking. You know, I'm a drummer. You know, what do I know about writing music? And Dick, he added a few things to it and changed the bridge. And we went over to Art Shields. And we laid that down probably in maybe around 4 or 5 takes. And that one was done. And that became the B-side of I Cannot Stop You.
Now, you guys then cut a deal with Coconut Groove?
We cut the deal with, it was Prophonic, was the name of the company. Okay, Prophonic Records. And they had 2 other labels. They had one called Washington Square, which was their soul label, and Coconut Groove, which was, I think, a jazz label. And they had all the rock groups like Lynn and the Invaders and people like that were on Prophonics. And, well, we liked the looks of the Washington Square label. So we asked them if they'd put it on Washington Square. And, oh, yeah, sure, no problem, you know. And so the record comes out and it's on Coconut Groove. You know, so we had no idea it was going to be on Coconut Groove. But it's a collector's item. I've seen that on eBay going for a lot of money.
Wow. And that's where it became kind of a local hit.
Yeah.
It was on Coconut Grove.
Right.
Yeah.
And it kind of died for a while. And then all of a sudden it took off again. And we get a call that there's a couple national labels looking at us. One was USA, one was Boda, one was Lori, and one was, I think it was Mercury. And we had to go back down to Prophonics in Mount Morris, because we were going to talk to these labels, you know, and try and work out some kind of deal. And before we even got down there, the guys at Prophonics had already sold the master, or leased the master to USA. So we didn't have any say in it. They just went ahead and did it. And that's how we ended up there. But for us, it worked out good.
And USA, that's the Chicago label, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, the Buckinghams were our label mates
Right.
at the time. They had kind of a drag out.
Well, yeah, big record.
Oh, yeah, I got Denny Tufano, still a good friend of mine. And their drummer, Tommy Shekel, who is now playing drums for Paul Revere, or Paul Revere's Raiders. He's the one that shamed me back into drumming about 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. He shamed me into going and buying a kit and keep going. I didn't even know he knew who I was. I just got an email from him out of the blue. And was talking to me about USA Records and all the stuff the Buckinghams did. He remembered us and all this, and I got to be good friends with him. And
This podcast is sponsored by our friends at Electric Kitsch, located at 2106 Kosciuszko Avenue in Bay City, Michigan. They offer new and used records, including local to Michigan original vinyl and CDs, as well as clothing, electronic equipment, funky household items, music gear, and stringed instrument repair. You can find them on the web or call 989-402-1411.
Well, how did things change for you once you had the record out on USA and it did chart in the top 100 on Cashbox, right? And was just out of the top 100 on Billboard.
yeah.
So now you guys are national. Mm-hmm. How does that change things for you?
A lot, because before, when you're playing locally, you get out of school Friday afternoon, and you go take your stuff to the den or somewhere around town, set it up, you play, go home. Now we're going to Tri-City Airport at the time. And back then is when you loaded all your stuff in the belly of the airplane. Your drums, your PA system, everything. You'd never get away with that today because you couldn't afford it. Right. But baggage was free back then. And now we have to get out of school on Friday afternoon. I had to skip my 7th hour class because everybody else got out at 2:50. I got out at 3:50. And we've got like a 4:30 flight, to get out of town, to get to wherever we're going. So I had to skip my last class.
Well, I'm sure the administration was more than
every
helpful.
time I came back to school on Monday, I went into Mr. Grossman's office, picked up my blue unexcused absence, took it to my 7th hour teacher when I got back there.
So you were a senior at this time, or 11th?
I was a senior.
Okay.
Yeah. But they knew. The teachers knew what was going on.
What school were you at?
I was at Arthur Hill.
Arthur Hill. Okay.
Was I a senior? No, I think we were still junior year.
How did you guys get the money together to go to the studios, or was it something offered to you?
Well, no, it was studio time at the time was being taken care of mostly by Gene Bruce's mother.
Oh.
Vivian Bruce. See, her and Jim Leach, they formed their own company called Vim Enterprises. V for Vivian and
Weren't they brother and sister?
Pardon me?
Weren't they a brother and sister? Or
No, that was Gene was Vivian was Gene's mother, and Jim was Art's uncle.
That's
I'll be damned.
Yeah, so that's where that connection.
So they helped you guys out with the
they
studio.
helped us out
As soon as you
with
got an announcement that you could go, they made the money happen.
That's right. The money happened, and
Wow.
the airplane tickets happened.
Oh yeah, that too.
And the studio had to put up money for that too, because we weren't going to. I mean, we're supposed to be a national band. We're not going to pay for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And they weren't happy with some of the expense reports we turned in. But I remember once Brian Bennett, rest his soul, I was a heck of a keyboard player, and he had trout for breakfast one morning at a hotel. And
Why not?
I was sitting in the living room at Gene's house, and Jim or Drew were on the phone and talking to the record company. I think he was talking to Bob Monaco. And I could hear Monaco yell through the phone, "And who had trout for breakfast?" Funny stuff like that would happen. But, we were playing down in Louisville, Kentucky. And I believe it was the day that Martin Luther King was assassinated. And we had all kinds of crazy stuff going on. Then, I mean, there was a, I remember we were staying at the Holiday Inn there, and there was a big white rooming house behind the place. Well, somebody started that on fire. And we saw people jumping out of the windows into life nets from the fire department.
Jeez.
You know, and there were people in the streets, and I couldn't find Brian. You know, I was the leader. I wanted to make sure I knew where everybody was, and I couldn't find Brian, but I heard this laughing, and I look, and I find Brian. He's out on the balcony of our room, throwing pennies down at the crowd. So I said, get in here, you know. So just crazy stuff like that.
Well, who did you? I'm sure back in those days when you were playing, it was usually kind of a package deal. I'm sure there were other bands, you know, on the same gig. Who were some of the groups you played with back in those days? Do you remember?
New Colony 6. I still talk to Ray Graffia and Ronnie Rice pretty often. And let's see, we did the Shadows of Night, did the Gentrys. Mike Gardner, the drummer from the Gentrys, I called him the Mooch. Because every time they came and played Daniel's Den a lot. And he never came to town that he didn't call me to borrow something from my drum kit. Because he had lost something. It was just crazy. And God, who else did we work with?
Well, I know all those guys played at the Blue Light and Daniel's Den, and probably played at Band Canyon and
Sure.
you know, all those teen clubs in the area.
Yeah. But Band Canyon kind of leaves a sour taste in our mouth.
Okay, what happened there?
Well, you know, we played a lot at Daniel's Den. And Frank Patrick, he was the owner. You know?
Right.
And they used to talk constantly. You know, we loved the man. You know, he had us there all the time, but we nicknamed him Windy. And we were playing at Band Canyon, and we were going to do Windy by the Association. It was a cover that we did. And we announced, I don't know if Danny announced it or I announced it or whatever, but now we're going to do one dedicated to Windy, old Frank Patrick from over at Daniel's Den. Well, the guy at Band Canyon, he didn't like that very much. So he came over and he unplugged us.
Wow.
Yeah,
Was that your first show there?
No, we played there before.
Okay.
Now, do you remember if this was, trying to think, Lemaire? He used to kind of run the show during the times it was open, but it could have been Kehoe also.
No, I wanted Kehoe. I think his name was Ed Langenberg.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
An educator from Bay City who was kind of like a bouncer
You
there.
betcha. And he knew how to bounce. And so he came right into our dressing room, and he went right after Jim. And we're all scared to death. You know, we're standing there. The poor Jim, you know, this guy's got Jim against the wall, and Jim's fighting to get away from him.
Wow.
Jim wasn't backing down from the guy. But we finally got away and got out of there, and got out. We were never invited back again. But my dad at the time was a Fed. He was a Treasury agent. And I was telling my dad about it, and he said, well, I'm going to have the boys go down and check his machines. So,
What a crazy story.
yeah, so what happened from that, I don't know. But
So he put a little heat on Ed Langenberg?
what's that?
He put a little heat on Langenberg?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
He was good. Well, he had to take a state police officer with him every place he went. You know, because my dad wouldn't carry a gun. And which is fine, as long as he had a police officer there that knew what he was doing.
Well, I'm
you know.
sure that probably gave Ed a little pause when he saw that come in.
Probably. But
You really knew you weren't coming back at that
oh
point.
yeah, that was it.
Yeah,
We were done.
yeah, you were blackballed at that
That
point.
was it. And gosh, I'm trying to think. Who else did we? One thing we didn't. we didn't play with these guys, but we there were 3 of us all staying at the hotel, same hotel. Excuse me. It was the Holiday Inn on Mannheim Road in Chicago. It was right across from what was then O'Hare Field. And we were staying there with the Box Tops and the association. And it was funny because we all met down in the lobby and they're talking, you know, we're all getting ready to go to our shows. And the association, they left first. They had limos. You know, girls in the limos, all that kind of stuff. They took off. And I should mention that to Terry Kirkman because I still keep in touch with Terry. And they took off, and then the Box Tops had like an old Greyhound bus that they had converted into a tour bus. And they took off second for their job. We had an orange U-Haul van. And now we had no windows in it. And it's just Jim and usually Danny sitting shotgun up in front, loading everything in, and we took off. And I remember once we took off, we had a show going. We were going up Route 66, and Art said, "Go fast, Jim, go fast." So Jim stands on it. The back door of the van opens up, and all of our equipment goes out the back of the van.
Oh, man.
And I remember, I'll never forget hearing Gene Bruce. He says, "There she goes!" and this, my cymbals are rolling down the road. And my cymbals are rolling down Route 66. Guitar amps are right there.
Holy crap.
Brian's amp is out there. But luckily, we didn't really wreck a lot. And we got to this town where we were playing, and there was a music store still open. And we talked the guy that owned the music store into lending us some stuff that we needed for the night. So it worked out okay. But it's just things like that happen to you when you're on the road.
Yes, indeed. Wow, good story.
And then we come home to get back. And when we'd fly somewhere on a Friday, we'd do a show maybe Friday night. And we'd do a Saturday, and we'd have to fly back on Sunday. And because we had to be back at school at 7 o'clock Monday morning.
Do you remember what kind of money you were making at that point, Dick?
The band itself, I think, I think we started out when it first went national. I think we were getting around 500 a night. And then as the record got bigger, I think we got maybe up to around 1,500. And which back then was decent money.
That's awesome.
Right.
And you guys know who the Crying Shames are.
Oh, sure.
And Toad, Tom Duty, he and I are still good friends. And we talked one night about the finances, because we were with the same company. They were recording for Columbia, but we were with MG Productions. And both of MG Productions. And so were the Shadows of Night at the time. And he and I talked, and we put all our money together, and it worked out that the Cherry Slush probably made $3,000 more through our whole careers than Crying Shames did through their career. Because they were getting lowballed the same way we were.
Uh-huh.
So.
Yeah, well, that's how, the team clubs could afford name bands because, they weren't paying out that much money.
No.
The Byrds could play Daniel's Den and Band Canyon, and they could still make a profit, which is pretty incredible when you think about it.
I had to sneak into that show, that Byrds show, because I wasn't old enough to get into the thing. I could play there, but I couldn't get in. Couldn't buy a ticket and go in.
Wasn't that like booked before they were real big? They had a bunch of commitments to concerts, the Byrds.
Well, that story was more Simon and Garfunkel, that they had been booked. I'm not sure if it was I think it was the Wyagogo for them, but they were booked before Sound of Silence came and became a #1 hit. And Bob Dyer always told a story that Paul Simon didn't ask for more money. They signed the contract and they lived up to it.
Yeah.
And, that Dyer always respected him for that he didn't, try to gouge them, because they were on a hit.
Yeah.
So,
I think Jim Atherton had something to do with those Simon and Garfunkel shows. Because he had booked him in Flint, and he offered him to Bob Dyer for like $500 or $600.
Oh, okay.
You know, I didn't know that. Excuse me. I didn't know that Jim had passed.
A couple of weeks ago.
Yeah,
a month ago or so.
I got a message from him on Messenger.
So did
One day.
I did too. we were setting him up to be on the show.
yeah.
And the next day, I don't know, it was Kurt Johnson or from Terry Night in the Pack or somebody said, well, Jim passed away yesterday.
And you know, there's still nothing. I haven't seen anything about his death anywhere.
No real
I don't know.
tributes or anything either,
No.
other than his private
It's like
page.
it's a big secret or something.
Well, I think I saw something. His sister said they were going to do some memorial in the future sometime.
Well, one of the things that you know, we had a real nice conversation, and you know, we were exchanging texts. He was going to resurrect the old Lucky 11 label.
Yeah.
That was his
Yeah.
big project, and he also had a venue where he was going to present, I think, concerts via video. And one of his big deals was getting the original 3 guys in Grand Funk Railroad back together, and figuring that maybe Don Brewer and Mark Farner could put aside their differences for one performance.
I think it was going to be at Don Brewer's old high school stadium or something.
Yeah, somehow that school, they had turned, according to Jim, they had turned over this auditorium to him to, I guess, kind of manage and produce events there. And so he had a lot of irons in the fire. It's just too bad that, you know, he passed. He had some really great ideas.
We sat down for a meeting for our second season here to browse ideas for guests, and Gary mentioned Jim Atherton, and Fred was like, "Oh, hey, yeah," and I'm like, well, "How do I know that name?" Jim friended me on Facebook that weekend just before that. I was on my Facebook, and he was in the feed that night, and I'm like, "Oh, that's the guy that just friended me," and we have like 3 friends in common. That's it. So I was like, well, Gary says, I'll reach out to him. We'll get, you know, and then they started talking. It wasn't 2 weeks later, and Fred posted to us in the morning. He goes, Jim just passed last night. We were getting him lined up for the show here.
Well, I was talking to Kurt Johnson one day, and I asked him, whatever happened to Jim Atherton? And he says, oh, he's still around here. You know, he lives over in Chelsea. Or not Chelsea, but Charlotte.
Yeah, Charlotte.
And I said, I didn't know he was still around. And he said, oh, yeah. Well, a couple of days later, get a friend request from Jim Atherton. So I said, yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah.
You know, so I started talking to Jim, and he kept sending me all these
Video things?
these things of 96 Tears. All these different takes of 96 Tears from different bands.
Yeah.
I thought, why are you sending me these? You know, I had nothing to do with that record, you know. And then he said he had his own studio, and it looked like a church. He sent me a picture of it. And then, you know, I hear he'd passed away.
Yeah, I got a text from him the day before, and he had, and we'd been talking about Lucky 11, and he had a young country artist that he was going to put on Lucky 11, and he said, this will be the first country artist on Lucky 11.
Okay.
And
Damn.
there it is, all gone now.
It's intriguing. Did you guys get to talk a little bit before he passed there? Like a little, other than getting the videos passed back and forth? Did he shed any light on his plans or what he had been up to?
Well, he wanted me to do some work, some drumming. He didn't say with who, but I had talked to Kurt Johnson, and Kurt still has some material that he would like to do, and I told Kurt, yeah, I'll be glad to help you out with it when you get some time. And I believe Kurt's an electrical engineer, and he does, or electrical contractor, and he's out doing a lot of that kind of work. So, but if he ever calls and wants to do something, you know, I'm up for it.
Yeah, I think he was trying to get Question Mark and the Mysterians maybe on the same performance, maybe to open for Grand Funk Railroad. So
I think he was tying in the classic rockers for sure, because if he would have hit me up, it's probably because of the podcast here.
Yeah.
It's the only reason he would know me, not because of the music. So
well, that's what I was talking to Jim. I said, well, we can certainly promote it.
Heck yeah. And with that, we want to thank Mr. Dick Coughlin for coming in and sharing his Cherry Slush stories from Saginaw, as well as his history and his vast musical knowledge for our part 1 of a 2-part series with him. And we will be back with you for the second part here in 2 weeks. We hope you'll tune in then. And thank you so much for listening. Have a good one.
The MMHP is hosted on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and our own Libsyn podcast site. You can also search MMHP989 on Facebook for up-to-the-minute information, as well as both Dr. J and Sir Fred's album picks of the week, posted every weekend. You can connect with Scott on the web at scottbakermusic.com, Dr. J at michiganrockandrolllegends.com, Sir Fred at fredrife.com, and the Electric Kitch at electrickitch.com.
This podcast wouldn't be here without special help from Studio 163's Alan Garcia, our podcast videographer and wingman, Mr. Mike Beatty, MMHP tagline specialist, Mr. Eddie Switek, and of course, Gary Johnson, Fred Rife, the Electric Kitch, and all of our special guests, and especially you listeners. We want to thank you.
You've been listening to the MMHP and the 989.